Frustration over immigration. The High Court blocking President Obama's executive order. It would have shielded 5 million people from deportation. We'll discuss the fallout. And also, Democrats stage a sit-in and Republicans lash out. Just the latest Capitol Hill battle, this time over gun control. The question is, will it help or hurt the cause? Then Bernie Sanders finally acknowledging that he will not be the nominee. But does that mean he's dropping out? I suggest you don't hold your breath. We could get an answer one way or the other tonight. We're live at the Sanders event. Dominic Carter on the scene. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us on what turned out to be a very busy news day this Thursday. We start with the Supreme Court. A 4-4 tie just blocked President Obama's biggest move on the subject of immigration. Here is the president's reaction.
Today's decision is frustrating to those who seek to grow our economy and bring a rationality to our immigration system and to allow people to come out of the shadows and lift this perpetual cloud on them. I think it is heartbreaking for the millions of immigrants who've made their lives here, who've raised families here, who hope for the opportunity to work, pay taxes, serve in our military, and more fully contribute to this country we all love in an open way.
The High Court's deadlock, it upheld an appellate court's ruling that blocked the president's executive action that would have prevented deportations of up to 5 million undocumented immigrants. This is one of the president's big legacy moves. So this will have political as well as practical repercussions. And he pointed blame at the Republicans as he says they've been blocking immigration legislation since he's been in office. All right, we got a terrific panel tonight here, and let's introduce them. Former Democratic New Jersey Congressman Steve Rothman. He joins us, as does his friend across the aisle, Chris Shays, former Republican Congressman from the great state of Connecticut, and Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. All right, guys.
I'm elected.
Yes, no one thought otherwise. So let's get to it right now. I kid, but from the Democratic perspective, the president was frustrated, altogether surprised. I mean, even with the passing of Scalia, didn't they think this was probably going to be a 4-4 ruling?
I think they thought it would be a 4-4 ruling, but it doesn't change the fact that it was the wrong ruling. Actually, nothing was decided since it was a tie, and now the decision was left to the lower court that went against Obama. But comprehensive immigration reform is supported by most Americans. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, businesses, obviously the progressives support it, a pathway to citizenship. And what Obama did was, when the U.S. Senate voted 70 out of 100 to pass comprehensive immigration reform, but the Republican-controlled House killed it, Obama had no choice but to take an executive order to allow work permits for about 4 million illegal immigrants.
Now, Chris, we saw, I know there's a lot of arguments from Republicans that said this was always overreach from the president. So we'll get to the method as to how we got there and whether it was or not. But in your time in the House, hadn't there been legislation resembling very similar to what the president did as it related to undocumented immigrants, specifically kids brought in by parents at a young age, or the parents of those kids that were born here, that came here illegally? Wasn't there bipartisan support at one point for this in Congress, where there was enough Republicans on board that it could have been law?
Yeah, there was bipartisan support for elements of what the president did, but not, the president did overreach. He was frustrated, and to say he has no choice, no, you live by the law. The irony is, I guess you could say, it was a 4-4 decision, so some justices thought he was within the law.
How different was this than the Bush proposal when George W. was president? And obviously it didn't pass, but it had a lot of support of Democrats and some Republicans.
Oh, no, well, President Bush wanted to do more.
Yeah.
But he realized you have to pass a law to do it. You just don't do executive decision. His hand's raised. Ask this guy.
You may want to remember that Ronald Reagan granted 5 million illegal immigrants amnesty.
Yeah.
This was not amnesty. This was for those who had children who were U.S. citizens. They would get work permits as long as they had a clean record.
Well, certain Republicans said that semantics, said it's amnesty in a different way, but at the end of the day, you're giving people legal status that were never married, that didn't come through the right way.
Well, they wouldn't be made U.S. citizens. They would simply have a work permit, come out of the shadows, not be subject to the harassment they're subject to, and let them pay taxes.
Yes. You know, Andrew, of course, you got to look at this through the political prism in 2016. Donald Trump had problems with the Latino vote for a whole host of reasons well before today. I can't see this helping matters any, especially if he embraces the decision, let alone in some swing districts too.
Well, I mean, this shines a spotlight on a couple of big 2016 issues. First of all, the stark difference between Trump and Clinton when it comes to immigration. I think most people realize it's somewhat unpracticable to try to deport 11 million people. And so I think some measure of this will wind up passing at some point. It also shines a spotlight on the Garland nomination to the Supreme Court and the delay by Republicans in the Senate, which, you know, I've criticized ever since the nomination was submitted that they haven't taken action on. But I actually, you know what, I'm actually somewhat relieved by it now, because we're going to resolve this with the November election. And I've been arguing for some time, and I'm sure the Congressman will disagree with me. I think the Supreme Court's been out of step with where the nation is on a lot of social issues for quite some time. So I think we'll get this resolved with the November election. I suspect Hillary will win, and we'll wind up with a left-leaning Supreme Court for the first time in memory.
Okay, I understand the decision by filling a vacancy, but aren't we a little bit optimistic, irrationally so, that somehow people will take a cue that November will mean something? Yes, there'll be a new president, obviously, but at the end of the day, that if you still have a makeup where at least if one of the chambers is Republican, and you have a Democratic president, hypothetically, it's going to be the same old, same old, same old.
Yeah, no. The bottom line is it could be huge. I mean, you could have a Trump Republican wipeout, and then you could have a mandate. So if the election provides the mandate, yes. The compromise is fairly simple, it seems to me. You're not going to deport probably 15 million, not 11. You let them stay, you let them have a work visa, you let them travel, you just don't make them citizens.
Work visas.
And right, but you know, and some Democrats would say make them citizens, but that may be the compromise. It's the sad thing is no one thinks of compromise anymore. It's my way or the highway.
I agree with just about everything that Chris said. There's a potential for a Republican wipeout in the House and the Senate, which would mean then that while the Supreme Court, if Hillary wins, would lean towards approving comprehensive immigration reform, whatever needed to be done in the House and Senate, the Republicans would then be on notice, even if they kept a slight majority in the House, that the American people really want to change when it comes to immigration reform and guns and the like.
And I've run out of time in this segment, Andrew, but there was other decision today. Affirmative action was ruled on. There's a host of important issues that are on the docket. We're starting to learn what 4-4 looks like. Any chance here we think that if Republicans see the polls or Trump does something stupid, that they say we're better off with Garland than somebody that Hillary puts up?
If Trump does something stupid.
When Trump does something stupid.
Next thing.
Yeah.
I think you're already starting to see some buyer's remorse from Senate Republicans. Maybe we should have approved this already.
Because Garland could be a Kennedy for the right.
But I think they're
you know?
stuck both on immigration and on the nomination.
They would probably do better with him than someone else Hillary might
All right.
choose.
This one you guys will have a first-hand opinion on. They came, they sat, but did they conquer? Will the Democratic sit-in in Congress do anything? Or was it just a publicity stunt like Paul Ryan says it was?